Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and I'm back with my plans and pans. This Wednesday, members of the House and Senate gathered to listen to a presentation by President of Ukraine, Zelensky, who really told us about what he needed, what he was hoping from the United States, and also to show us a video of the horror that was taking place. Many of us have seen that on television night after night in Ukraine. He is an amazing leader, a hero in the world, and we could not help but be moved emotionally by his very clear statement about what this terrible invasion, unprovoked and unprecedented by Russia into Ukraine, the murder of just ordinary civilians and children who have died. Now, what he wanted, and he did talk about, was that we clear the skies over Ukraine. And I think, as I told you last week, when we met with the President of the United States, the Democrats, that the President made it very clear that if we, the United States, were to begin to shoot down planes over Ukraine, it would amount to, as he said, World War III. He leaned forward. But there are many things that we can do that he asked for. We are giving more assistance, and in fact, it's $1 billion that we have, and incrementally, and adds up now to $1 billion that since the beginning, and let's remember, it's only been about 3.5 weeks now since the attack by Russia. He wants more in the way of sanctions, and we are increasing the sanctions. What he asked for is that all the politicians in Russia and even members of their Duma, which is their parliament, be sanctioned. So all of that is being considered by the United States. We are providing the money for humanitarian, for military assistance, so that they can defend themselves. Meantime, it is not going well for Vladimir Putin. There's no question about it. They still have this long convoy that can barely move. It's moving toward Kiev, the capital. So they're going to outside cities on various parts of the border. It is ugly all the way. And so we are continuing to unite the world, and Russia is increasingly isolated from all the rest of the world. We also ended what we call permanent normal trade relations with Russia, which is very important. We want many other countries to join in that. And so that the isolation of Putin and of Russia is really nearly complete around the rest of the world. Moving on, we passed some important legislation. This has been busy time. We passed the FAIR Act. It's a piece of legislation that ends forced arbitration, and lots of non-union workers, ordinary employees, people, consumers who buy products and sign contracts for them, end up often in the small print signing away their legal rights to hold companies and employers accountable. And these forced arbitration agreements say, oh no, you can't go to court to sue us. We're going to give you a list of arbitrators, a list formed by the companies that you have to pick from, and you have to go through this arbitration. and that's how we will settle this. Well, as a consequence, people have lost their jobs. People have been denied their rights when it comes to products. And also, the point I made on the floor of the House is that we have heard from people, families, loved ones who have loved ones in nursing homes where, at this very emotional moment, often of, putting a loved one or a loved one going to a nursing home, that you sign all kinds of documents, including, it turns out, most often, forced arbitration contracts, which say that even if your loved one has been neglected or injured or worse in a nursing home, that you do not have your day in court. And so we already did pass legislation that people who are victims of abuse, sexual abuse, or harassment can't be forced to have these forced arbitration agreements. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for consumers, it's good enough for employees, and it's certainly good enough for people in nursing homes. So this legislation was passed in the House. Hopefully it'll go well in the Senate. And we will not have these forced arbitration contracts, and millions of people will have access to their day in court to hold these businesses accountable. As a member of the Budget Committee, I was at a hearing called Ensuring Women Can Thrive in a Post-Pandemic Economy. And we heard some very important data that is not going to surprise you, that women lost 12.2 million jobs during the pandemic. No surprise, women as the majority of caregivers for children, for older family members, had to leave the workforce. And this has been a serious problem. 47% of the labor force is represented by women, but women lost 52% of the jobs during the pandemic. The real answer is we have to make sure that we provide adequate funds for childcare, for long-term care, uh, for people that want to stay at home. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that women are not overly burdened, as we are, by things that keep us out of the marketplace. Also, focusing on women in the job market, we acknowledged, not celebrated, what we call Equal Pay Day, talking about how long women have to work in order to match what men on average have made in the last year. And it turns out that the average woman would have to work until March 15th of this year, 2022, in order to earn as much as the average man made in 2021. But it gets worse, because if you look at what is Equal Pay Day for Black women, that doesn't come until September 21st. And if you look at Equal Pay Day for Latinas, it's just about a year, December 8th. So Latinas have to work almost an entire additional year in order to catch up with what men made last year. So, we have been trying for years to pass equal pay for equal work in the Congress, to make sure that women get what they deserve. But also, we need to raise the wages in what are mostly the jobs that women have, as opposed to jobs that men have. When you talk about childcare and health care, and home care. Those are low-paid jobs that deserve much more money, and of course, early child education as well. So there's definitely a discrepancy against women in the workforce. But I was also able to participate in an acknowledgement and a celebration of what we have already done for businesses and for workers. I had a press conference with Invest in America and the Small Business Majority, two organizations that have really led the fight to help small businesses, not only in our community, but around the country. And we know that in the American Rescue Act that we were able to pass a number of programs. And the programs that we were looking at were what we call the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund that we did, the shuttered venue operator grant program. So we passed a number of bills that really said that doors can be open. For example, for not-for-profits, we were able to help Northlight Theater, which is so important to our district. And we talked to a couple of restaurant owners. Vietnam Nam, which Alan Moy owns in Evanston, my hometown, in the 9th Congressional District, and also Javier Haro, who has Food Hero, another restaurant, and they have not only been able to now open, hire back their workers, but they're expanding, both of them. And this is true of many restaurants. You know, people are anxious now that it looks like things are getting better with COVID to go out and about. And fortunately, the American Rescue Act was able to provide that money. So, you know, sometimes it's really easy to forget that good things were done. You know, people are still struggling to pay their bills, but in the meantime, we have done an amazing job in this administration, and frankly, the Democrats who alone passed the American Rescue Act, there was not a single Republican who joined us, really has made a difference in bailing out our economy from the recession caused by the pandemic. And so let's keep it up. And hopefully things are going to continue to get better for everyone. Also, wanted to just take a moment to tell you I went to a very, very sad funeral on Saturday for a dear friend, Dr. Paul Farmer, whose death at age 62 is really a loss for the entire world. Paul Farmer extended global health to places around the world and millions of people who would not have received the health care that they need. Paul's view of the world was that every single human being should have the same rights and treatment as any other. I met him first 20 years ago in Haiti when Ethel Kennedy invited me to go along with her when the Robert F. Kennedy Foundation was giving him an award to Partners in Health, the organization that Paul Farmer founded in Haiti, in a small settlement, really, that was called Cange, way up on the Central Plateau. And there was a hospital. They had never had any access to health care at all, that Paul Farmer started when he was a student at Harvard Medical School. He said that, yes, I want to spend my off time when I'm not in in class and when I'm not taking exams in Haiti, having a hospital up in Cange. And there were state-of-the-art medications and equipment that Paul managed to get up the mountain to Cange, and people getting health care that was really first class, not fancy by any means, but first class. And the thing I remember most when I met Paul 20 years ago was his sitting next to a child that was dying. He was going to die. And Paul spent his time just sitting next to him and stroking him and leaning over and whispering to him in Creole. Paul learned Creole so he could talk to his patients and neighbors. He has a small house in Haiti. And he sat with him until this young man, this boy, died, so he didn't have to die alone. This philosophy of caring for everyone has meant that in countries all around the world, and gleaming hospitals now where none existed before, in Haiti, Marabele, a beautiful hospital, and not only medical centers, but also teaching doctors. There are universities now that are teaching people locally to become doctors. Look him up, Dr. Paul Farmer, someone to admire. I'm going to absolutely carry on this legacy along with the literally millions of people now who have been educated, who have been helped around the world. He died in Rwanda, where he has also set up amazing work in hospitals and teaching hospitals in Rwanda and so many places. It's hard for me to even talk about him because I miss him so much. I managed to see him and keep in touch with him for all these years, and I thought there would be many more. I want to talk to you about a lighter subject, daylight savings. So the Senate passed a bill that would make permanent daylight savings. Not standard time, but daylight savings, and stop the changing of our clocks forward and back twice a year, and to make that permanent. Well, I had a hearing in my subcommittee on consumer protection and commerce and had a discussion about daylight saving. And there were witnesses who had different views, some who thought it should be standard time because of children going to school in the mornings and it would be too dark, too late, and it should stay that way. And people who talked about keeping daylight savings permanently because a lot of people like light at the end of the day. Businesses prefer light at the end of the day. That seems to be good for commerce. And so I have asked my constituents to tell me, what do you think? So far, 7,000 people, thank you very much, and it's open through the weekend to reply to my office, have said that 47% said that they would prefer to make daylight saving time permanent. Another 25% said they really don't care that much, but it should be permanent, either standard or daylight. They didn't express a preference. Only 12% of you wanted to leave it alone and keep doing the switcheroo twice a year. And then another 16% support standard time to remain in place. 70% of Americans in general say they just want one time. So, and it does seem to be that most people want the or at least the plurality so far want just daylight savings time all year round. So let us know. It's interesting to hear from you. And as a member of Congress, the idea that we can control time is very empowering. But let's do it right, and let's hear from you. I always like to end with coronavirus, and we know we've had a few high profile cases, and Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, I guess is in quarantine right now with a breakthrough case, without a doubt. He's had his vaccine and boosters, etc. And also the Prime Minister of Ireland, who was in the United States, was at a dinner for St. Patrick's Day, but was called away because he tested positive. And we are seeing that around the world, that we definitely are seeing some spikes in places in Europe, in China. So the world, in any case, is not done with the coronavirus. And of course, it's so important still that we get vaccines around the world, because if we have the virus anywhere, we're in danger everywhere. We don't want to have any more varieties of variants of the virus, and in fact, not only for the coronavirus, but we don't want to see some new pandemic that could spring up. So let's try and get everybody vaccinated, and we are certainly are calling on the United States and the rest of the world to ensure that. Some good news about COVID is that the medicine patent pool, which is sponsored by the United Nations, has signed with 35 companies for a generic drug that Pfizer makes. I'll try and say it. It's the Pfizer Paxlovid drug. That is a treatment. This is not a vaccine. This is a treatment for people with COVID. So the fact that it will be generic means it'll be a good deal cheaper, and available again, hopefully, to people all over the world through these 35 countries that the UN medicine patent pool has. But still, we want you to be careful. I was in a very crowded elevator here on Capitol Hill, and I had my mask in my pocket. I didn't put it on right away, and I'm, hoping that all will be well. I think from now on, getting into any elevator, particularly a crowded elevator, that I'm going to put my mask on and just be wary of my surroundings. I hope you do too. So be well. Enjoy the weekend. We are definitely heading towards spring. I look out at my yard in Evanston, and I see all things sprouting out of the ground. It makes me happy. Look for it and enjoy. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.